there's a lot of talk about compromise running, and often athletes will be, you don't need to do compromise running, but I think that's total nonsense. Of course, you need to do compromise running.
Let's break down that 15 hours then. I imagine there's a running component. I imagine you're also spending a lot of time in the gym. How would you think about the main categories of training that you're doing for Hyrox?
My general weekly breakdown is I'll do strength on a Monday. So, and that how that the strength will vary in the time of year, whether it's like, low reps, high strength, or higher reps, lower strength, whatever that might be. And I'll generally always do 2 sessions a day. So on that strength day, I'll also do an aerobic kind of run cycle or something like that. And then Tuesdays, I would do kind of a hard day where I would typically do a double threshold. So I'd do like a threshold run in the morning and then a threshold ski in the afternoon. Then Wednesdays, I was doing a long bike ride. I was doing like a gravel ride, and that would be like 3 hours, just level 2. I mean, I still wouldn't hang around. I'd still average like 260 watts for 3 hours. So, but yeah, it was just kind of a long aerobic day. And then Thursday, I'd almost repeat. I'd do another kind of harder double threshold day. Then Friday would be like a strength. Saturday would be compromised run sort of session, and then Sunday would be that Hyrox endurance type session where it's kind of strength based, but kind of more circuit based work. So
Mm.
I'd also often do some type of EMON or MRAP at the end of the strength sessions on a Monday and a Friday. So yeah.
Okay,
But
okay.
there's a lot of quality in there and a lot of intensity, and I wouldn't recommend it for everyone. Most people wouldn't be able to do that amount of quality all the time.
Yeah, and again, you've earned the right to do that kind of quality because you've built up that tremendous base over all of these years.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, let's break down some of these components a bit further then. So in terms of the double threshold training, are you talking purely in terms of running when you say double threshold, or would that involve some work on the ergs as well?
Yeah, so it's always work on the erg. So it's generally a run in the morning and then an erg in the afternoon, something like this. Yeah. And it does vary. Like in the lead up to Chicago, I wasn't doing threshold. I was doing VO2 max work in the morning, and then that would be the first session. The second session would be another erg session, like a ski or a row or something. Yeah, it would depend on how tired I was from the morning session, whether I'd make that second session quality, or sometimes I would just do level 2 endurance. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So the threshold work, okay, so that's obviously one set of the quality that you're doing each week. Let's look at the strength side as well. So you mentioned that after the pure strength sessions, you're quite often doing an AMRAP. So
Yeah.
maybe walk us through an example AMRAP. What are you looking for those kinds of workouts? And I think you said so you're doing them Monday, Friday, so this would be a twice a week thing, roughly?
Yeah, and I wouldn't always do the AMRAP, but sometimes I would. But I would say more often than not. But it was only like 20 to 25 minutes after strength that I would kind of include it, and that might, it would be it would always have some kind of base. It would include no running. I wouldn't do any running in there, but the base would be either cycling, rowing, or ski, and then it might, and it would be very more station focused. So I might do like a row into a push or a pull, and then some wobbles, or a row into maybe some devil press, and then a push or something like that. That there's just some sort of kind of circuit or an EMON or something that would go for like 20 to 25 minutes.
And what kind of
Yeah.
intensity are you trying to hit on those workouts?
I would say anywhere between not crazy hard. So anywhere between VT1 and VT2. I wouldn't say it's threshold. So because those days are kind of because I'm doing threshold and it's quite intense the next day, I'm trying to keep those days a little bit more aerobic, a little bit easier. So I'll do like an aerobic run, maybe 50 minutes each, like level 2 in the morning, and then I'll also try and keep that MRAP at a low intensity as well.
Okay, okay. So we've got the regular AMRAPs that are a little bit low intensity. We have these double threshold days as well. So walk us also through that long, grindy high rock session that you said that you're doing over the weekend. How would that look, and what kind of intensity are you looking at for that session?
Yeah, so that's a little bit lower. I'd say it's closer to your first aerobic threshold. I guess someone would giving that like, out of 20, like on the RPE scale, it's kind of like 13 out of 20, so somewhat hard. It's not like it's not easy, but you're putting in a little bit of effort, and it might consist of like 2 by 45 minute circuits, for example. I'll do a 45-minute circuit continuously, take a 5-minute break, and then do another 45-minute circuit. something like that for an hour and a half, and then with warm up and cool down, it's about 2 hours in total.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
and that
Okay.
would and that would consist of a lot of the stations as well, like stations and variations of stations and stuff like that.
I think there's two things that are going to surprise people. I think the lack of really high intensity is going to surprise people. I think when most people think of High Rocks or they think of CrossFit, they think all out efforts. And what I'm hearing from you, Dan, is you're definitely not going all out in these sessions. So I think that's the first thing that's going to surprise people. And the second thing is just the volume, the fact that you are hitting these quality sessions. It seems like 3 or 4 times a week. So do you feel like the intensity is something that most people get wrong when it comes to High
Yeah,
Rocks?
definitely. And I think it's the main mistake of nearly everyone doing high rocks, really, and especially what those coming from more of a CrossFit background, because just the name of certain sessions on their own, they scream high intensity. Like just the name AMRAP, as many rounds as possible. Like you need to get your head out of, everything needs to be gauged by intensity. So, like, if you've not got some kind of RPE or some target heart rate zone, you'll probably end up doing it too hard. And as I always tell the athletes that I coach, that what is the main thing that is going to allow athletes to perform at their best? And it is always training consistency. So to back off the intensity allows for more consistency between sessions. It allows more consistency between weeks. It allows more consistency between months. And that's the main thing that every athlete should always strive for in when they're planning their training. And I always like to think of everything should be what I term as a farmer's effort, is that a farmer has to work the next day. So if they go out on the fields and they just work and do everything they can on one day, and they have no energy for the next day, it's not going to work. So you should always finish every session with the ability to do 2 or 3 more reps. And like even with the threshold sessions, I'm actually more doing them sub-threshold, so just slightly below my VT2 actual pace. So when I measure my lactate, it's more between 3 to 3.5. It's not in the fours, it's not in the fives, it's just a little bit low. And that allows more consistency and backup between different sessions.
Okay. Okay. Now, another area I want to go into is how you've come to understand which specific workouts are most valuable. So, one thing about Hyrox, there's a million ways to do a Hyrox workout. You've talked about AMRAPs, you've talked about EMOMs. There's volumes/distance based workouts. There's time based workouts. You also have 8 different stations, so there's all kinds of different combinations. So, how have you thought about filtering through all of these different options and choices and ultimately identifying the most beneficial workouts to get better?
Yeah, well, I guess that's still evolving for me, for sure. I don't think I have the answers yet to that. But I mean, number one, it's totally individual, very individually specific, because the idea that you have to work on what you need to work on, right? So for me, I need to work on my pull, my pull, my lunges, my wall balls would be the 3 main ones, and then after that would be the burpees. They're the main ones. Like my ergs are totally fine. My running's totally fine, but in fact, that's 60% of the race already, right? So I've just got, so I think you have to work on those specific things, but also I think, as I said at the start, with Hyrox, people are still learning a lot about the training, but the rule that I always fall back to with training is undeniable, is the principle of specificity. The more specific you can make your training to the event, the better that training will be, of course. But you obviously that doesn't mean you can't do like just a Hyrox every day, because you'll just at the right intensity you'll just burn out and die. But the way you need to periodize your training to make sure that you're doing training as specifically towards the event as you possibly can, that's really important. And the other thing that I really am now starting to understand is, there's a lot of talk about compromise running, right? And often athletes will be, you don't need to do compromise running, but I think that's total nonsense. Of course you need to do compromise running. Like if you didn't need to do compromise running, you would see a direct relationship between the best runners doing the best run times, and that is definitely not the case. If you drew a line of the fastest runners in Hyrox compared to the fastest 5K times, there's a relationship, but it's not a direct relationship. Like it's not one for one. So I think you do need to include that compromised running. But I also think that you have to think about your background. For an endurance athlete, compromised running is probably not the thing that's going to make you faster. But compromised stations is an issue, right? Whereas if you're from a CrossFit background, or you're from more that strength background, compromised running is probably the thing that's going to be the thing that you're probably going to need to work on. So it's always very individual. So, and what I mean by that, the difference would be is that I might do like I might go very hard run into warbles, for example, for a compromised warble, or very hard erg into warbles, 2 minutes rest, do it again. Very hard run warbles, 2 minutes rest. Whereas the other side is that you go basically you have to make sure that there's no rest between the stations and the run. So you're compromising the run and you're not compromising the station.